If there's one thing we can expect from Darth Vader, it's his lack of patience for those within the Imperial hierarchy who failed him. Whether it be Admiral Ozzel, Captain Needa, or any of the numerous examples we've looked at within Legends, Vader was not forgiving of those who were unable to carry out their orders from the Sith Lord. Although we've looked at a few examples in Legends where Vader appeared to appreciate the efforts of some Imperial officers, with Lieutenant Greg and Admiral Piet coming to mind, Vader unleashing his fury was a far more likely outcome. But there's an example within Legends where Vader would actually ally with an Imperial corporate associate named Birra, promote her to the high-ranking position of Moff, and then actually step in and promise to protect her from the wrath of his own master, Emperor Palpatine. In this video expose, we'll explain these actions from Darth Vader and look at how the alliance would ultimately end very badly. Following the Battle of Yavin and the destruction of the first Death Star, Sidious was furious with his apprentice Vader, blaming him for being unable to stop a single X-Wing and setting back the Empire in the way of trillions of credits and 2 decades of work. Thus, Sidious had a new assignment for Vader. He was to give up command of his Star Destroyer, the Devastator, which was now to be placed under the command of Colonel Bircher, and then travel by an unmarked cruiser to a location with secret coordinates provided by Sidious. Vader himself was furious, seeing it as a serious demotion that also took away his ability to find the rebel pilot who destroyed the Empire's battle station, who he now knew was named Skywalker. But Sidious promised that it would be a trivial thing to lose a Star Destroyer if he redeemed himself and successfully carried out his next mission. Vader would hand over command to Bircher, but not before threatening the Imperial Colonel first. Vader then traveled to the coordinates provided by the Emperor, learning what his new task would be. Because of his failure at Yavin, he was relieved of his position commanding the primary forces of the Imperial fleet and was to oversee the construction of the second Death Star, a position Vader felt was clearly beneath his abilities. However, it would be through this position where Vader was introduced to the Imperial ally Birra. Not long into Vader's new position, he oversaw a meeting of the high-ranking Imperials tasked with constructing the new superweapon. As they pled that the quotas demanded by the Emperor were too high and there was simply not enough time to meet the deadline set for the project, Vader reminded them the Emperor demanded the project be completed on time, with the Sith Lord sent there as a motivating influence. Despite Vader's rejection of any excuses for their lack of success, an Imperial Admiral foolishly attempted to explain that if the Emperor was only there in person to see the realities of what he was asking to be done, then he'd understand. Vader, not appreciating the officer questioning his ability to properly provide details of the construction's realities, ignited his lightsaber through the chest of the Admiral, killing him instantly. We've looked at this scene before, but it's one of the more likely ways we think of Vader handling any Imperial officer questioning his orders. But what happens next is completely unlikely. As Vader asked if anyone would be comfortable in agreeing with the Admiral, a single voice quietly spoke up in agreement, instantly angering Vader, who demanded an explanation. The voice was that of Birra, who was a Kuat Drive Yard systems designer deployed to the battle station as a representative for the project. She explained that the Admiral was right. Unless the Emperor was there personally, it would be impossible to describe and relay all of the vast details surrounding the project. As Birra continued, she noticed the Dark Lord was being unusually quiet, and when prompted for a reply, Vader noted out loud that the Kuat systems designer was strong in the Force, a statement Birra simply didn't understand. But the reality of Birra's Force sensitivity gave Vader an idea. After dismissing the meeting so he could have a one-on-one conversation with Birra, she understood why Vader was most displeased with her previous display. But she also provided Vader with an offer. She knew Vader had enemies, and to ensure he had time to go after them, Birra asked that she be granted temporary status as an Imperial Moff so she could oversee construction of the Death Star. Given Vader's desire to continue his search for Luke, and of course hating that he was relegated to such a simple task within the Endor system, Vader agreed, later informing Birra that she had been granted the rank of Acting Moff. The construction of the second Death Star was now placed under her control, and he explained that he would now continue his search for Skywalker. Birra was thankful for her new position, but Vader had more. The Emperor himself was to arrive to the battle station shortly, and as Acting Moff overseeing its construction, she was to brief the Emperor on the progress being made. And as Vader ominously warned, if progress wasn't satisfactory, then she would have to confront a fate that no one could protect her from. This initial meeting with Emperor Palpatine went about as badly as it could have. As Palpatine disembarked from his shuttle and was greeted by Birra, he immediately questioned why she was wearing an Imperial uniform and why Vader wasn't there instead. As Birra attempted to explain that Vader was urgently called away from the battle station and she was granted the position of acting Moff, the Emperor interrupted her. He recognized Birra was a representative from Kuat Drive Yards, questioning why, in Palpatine's words, an insignificant creature and corporate functionary would be granted an Imperial rank as high as Moff. Furious, Palpatine told Birra she aspired above where he wanted her in connection to the Death Star, not worthy of being a Moff of the Empire's greatest undertaking. With that, the Emperor told Birra to go back to her quarters, where the Emperor would then deal with her later. Deeply troubled by the encounter and fearful of the Emperor's wrath, Birra believed her best course of action would be to take her own life. However, before she could, she heard the voice of none other than Darth Vader, who was communicating with her telepathically through the Force. Recognizing she was fearful, Vader actually told her not to pay attention to the Emperor or his promise for vengeance against her. Vader explained that despite the fact she might not be able to fulfill her duties as acting Moff overseeing the construction of the Death Star, she still had an important role in the machinations of Vader. He told Birra he would protect her from Emperor Palpatine's wrath. Birra was of course extremely grateful for Vader's help, and we later see what role Vader had for her that was important enough for him to protect her from his master. Birra was to help Vader locate and apprehend Luke, secretly performing her duties from within Vader's flagship, the Executor. Eventually, she would prove extremely helpful in Vader's efforts to find Luke, having tracked down a lead that there was a potential rebel being held within the detention center of Vader's former Star Destroyer, the Devastator, which might prove fruitful. As Birra explained, the only information the Empire had on him was that he was a moisture farmer on Tatooine, and before she could finish, Vader correctly guessed his last name was that of Skywalker, surprising Birra. Recognizing that she located Luke, Vader provided her with new orders. No matter what, Skywalker was to be detained alive, regardless of what it took to do so, and then Birra was to bring Skywalker directly to him. Promising her that if she completed the mission, she would be significantly rewarded, Birra was left to her task. With Vader confident, he was now one step closer to an alliance with the most powerful ally in the galaxy. There was only one problem. Luke was able to escape from the Devastator before he could be apprehended by Birra. Therefore, recognizing that she failed Vader and that she would now have to eventually face his wrath, Birra decided to flee during the chaos that was unfolding as the Empire engaged the Rebel fleet, forcing her to live a life where she had to continuously stay one step ahead of the Sith Lord. Vader would later learn about Birra's failure and her decision to defect from the Empire, which of course prompted him to promise that she would be destroyed alongside the rebellion he now sought vengeance against, having come so close to capturing Luke. Although we don't have confirmation about what exactly happened to Birra following her defection from the Empire, we do know there were rumors circulating within the Imperial ranks regarding her ultimate fate. Following the loss of Luke and the defection of Birra, Vader and Sidious would also learn that the colonel who'd been granted command of Vader's Star Destroyer, Colonel Bircher, had been a rebel spy the entire time, humiliating both of the Sith Lords. The combination of these elements caused Vader to execute his fury against numerous members of the Imperial hierarchy. During these days of vengeance, Vader would ultimately be assigned a new Imperial officer named Ensign Nanda, who would witness Vader brutally punishing any members of the Imperial ranks he held responsible for the Imperial defeats of the previous few days. And it's from Nanda that we see the fate that most likely befell Birra, given the fury Vader was consumed by in the aftermath of her failure and defection. As Nanda would reveal, rumors existed that former Moff Birra had been found dead on a little-known planet within the Outer Rim, suggesting that despite his initial clemency towards Birra in her conflict with the Emperor, he did ultimately make good on his promise. So there we have it, how Vader promoted an Imperial ally to acting Moff and then promised to protect her from Palpatine. Thank you very much to all of the Patreon members of Star Wars Reading Club, as your support is so greatly appreciated. You can find all of our social media links and a link to our Star Wars gaming channel in the description below for updates and even more Star Wars content. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for terrible first impressions.